that way, right? Now, did you come up just for the air show?
Oh no, we're here for a wedding.
Yeah. Oh, your wedding?
No.
So we can. How long did they say, Jill, about the ride? Those three. I think they're still at NAG. We're going to get word to your and tell her. Haha. And when will you up here?
That is our rides plane. That's a 1929 New Standard D25, powered by a Wright whirlwind engine, the same kind of engine that carried Charles Lindbergh to Paris in 1927. And that airplane is still doing today what it was designed to do in 1929, and that's to give people short rides in an airplane. But now, it's a really unique experience because not many places you can get a ride in an open.
I might get a Pepsi because I didn't have one of those.
And stumbling in for a perfect 3-point landing.
Do that? When they go upside down, you do that, right?
We are currently waiting for a report from our pilot, and maybe for a report from our pilots during the show as to whether or not we will continue to offer rides after the air show. Normally we do. It's a little bumpy up there today, and so we're not making any promises we can't keep, but I'm assuming that you can put your name on a list at the rides booth, and if we decide to proceed with rides after the show, we will fly until we run out of daylight or we run out of passengers, whichever comes first. So Our ride booth, as you may have noticed, is up here by the announcing tower, a little red shack right along the fence line. I'd like to make you aware of, first of all, where is the best place to watch the show? Well, we have 2 seating areas for you. If you're looking at the flight line of all the airplanes lined up along the fence, you would turn left and you would go up that hill. Up the hill there takes you past our gift shop and also our restroom facilities. When you get to the top, there are some aluminum bleachers, and that's a pretty good place to watch the show. But if you proceed farther up past my announcing tower, you'll find another area of benches farther to the north, and that is pretty much where most of the takeoffs and landings actually occur, kind of the middle of the runway. So if you're really interested in getting photographs of the airplanes as they touch down or as they lift off, that would probably be a better place for good photographs. And if you're not crazy about sitting on those hard benches in either location, you can rent a lawn chair at our gift shop. So, we're concerned for your comfort, as much as you can be. That was always to restore old airplanes to flying condition and fly them. And when he found out that people would actually pay money to come and see airplanes, old airplanes flying, well, that was the beginning of our air shows here at Old Rhinebeck, starting in 1960. So that has always been our goal and Cole's goal to begin with. He also believed in surrounding the airplanes with other things from their time period. And so collecting antique automobiles and operating them is also part of the show, along with the various music that you've heard playing and the fact that we like to keep this airport a grass field and just a little bit rustic, as it would have been in the early days of aviation. The time period that we cover here is from 1900 to 1939, early aviation in the first half of the 20th century. That encompasses the pioneer era. That was when people were still trying to figure out if you could get a flying machine into the air, and more importantly, can you get it back down on Earth in one piece. The pioneer era ran from about 1900 until 1914. In 1914, the First World War began, known as the Great War at that time. And aviation went to war. The airplane developed very rapidly in terms of technology, speed, and capability during the war years. And then that was followed by what many consider to be the golden age of aviation, the 1920s and 30s. And that's the time period of our standard biplane, when aviation became popular for ordinary people. People began to buy their own airplanes, and airplanes were being used for commercial purposes, for not only hopping rides, but for making things, deliveries of things that were time sensitive, things like newspapers and newsreel movies. Traveling salesmen began to use airplanes instead of taking the train. And of course, the beginning of scheduled airmail service, which led to scheduled airlines. All of that during the 1920s and 1930s, a time when records were being set almost weekly. And so we will be flying airplanes like our new standard from that time period as well this afternoon. And here comes the new standard with a load of happy passengers about to see the Hudson Valley from the air. Give them a wave as they go by. This could be you. Imagine looking out of an open cockpit, no obstructions, no plexiglass to look through, and staring down at the Hudson River. That is what you can do this afternoon, assuming the weather continues to cooperate. After the show, another thing to keep in mind is that we have a museum. We actually have 4 hangar-like structures full of more old airplanes, old airplane engines, old vehicles, and other aviation-related materials from that 1900 to 1939 time period.
Down a little further.
And your air show admission also entitles you to admission to the museums. Now, where are they? Well, those you would find if you go back out the way you came in to the parking lot, go through the parking lot and up the hill on the other side, and the museums are located at the top of the hill. And you can drive up there and park just beyond the museums if you wish. So the museums will be open until 5, so plenty of time to check that out. Get enough airplanes this afternoon at the show. Get a pick and a shovel, and occasionally rented a bulldozer for the weekend, and he began to dismantle those walls and create a runway. Here comes our new standard back in, slipping in over speedway.
Look at that orange.
And a nice smooth wheel landing. Main wheels first, and then bringing the tail down. So Cole built his own hangars. If you look inside the Curtis hangar that's down next to the snack stand, check out the construction of it, because it's all entirely made of scrap lumber that Cole scrounged up from one place or another to build that hangar. That's how he operated. Occasionally he actually had to sell one of his airplanes to get enough money to pay the bills and to keep working on other ones. In the 60s he was flying 2 shows a month, the first and last Sundays of the month. In the 1970s he added Saturdays and also went to every weekend, which is what we are strong in his will, all except 3 airplanes. And that was 1 airplane each, their choice, to the National Museum in Washington, the Smithsonian, and the U.S. Air Force Museum. And so the Smithsonian got his Southwest Snipe, they already had, on loan, and the Air Force Museum took that 1918 badge, and Cole's wife inherited the Fairchild 24, which eventually ended up back in our collection as well. So we are now the Rhinebeck Aerodrome Museum, and we are a charitable organization. You can make tax-deductible contributions. We have a membership program, and you can learn all about our museum, our programs, at our website, oldrhinebeck.org. So lots of ways to support, help us keep these old airplanes in the air. Here comes the new standard, another takeoff, another load of passengers anxiously anticipating their flight over the Hudson River. In and around our airplanes and hangars. And as I mentioned, Cole wanted to surround his airplanes with other things from their time period. So we're going to give you a little parade of some of the antique cars that we use in our shows today. And what we're going to do is line them up. We're going to drive them up the field toward the north. North is to your left as you look at the airfield. And I will describe each of the cars, then they will come back down along the fence line, and they will proceed up past the grandstand as well, right along that fence line there. All goes according to plan.
If I had $80,000, I'd be doing something else with you, so I'd buy a car like that. The other day, this mother just like walked down here, she's dead, and somebody could have come and taken the kids around. I just don't.
Okay, let's get started with our antique car parade. And the first vehicle to start down the field is a Model T Speedster. Now, the Ford Model T was manufactured from 1908 until 1927. And during that time, Ford built more than 15 million Model Ts. Now, most of them were open touring cars, 5-seat touring cars, or enclosed sedans. But you could also buy different kinds of custom bodies from a number of other manufacturers, what we today would call aftermarket accessories. So you can take your ordinary Model T and turn it into a speedster like this and look like a stuffed Bearcat. The next vehicle coming down the line is the legendary taxi cab of the Marne. This is a 1913 Renault taxi cab, and when World War I began, the German army advanced very rapidly in 1914 until they were at the very gates of Paris, right at the Marne River. And the defenses of Paris were not really ready yet. The commandant commandeered all of the buses and taxi cabs in the city to transport soldiers to the front lines. And all of the citizens of Paris saw these long lines of taxis and buses crammed full of soldiers going to save the city, which they did. And so the legend of the taxi cabs of the Marne was born. The next vehicle to come along is a little bit later in time. This is a 1928 Chandler sedan. This car was built in Cleveland, Ohio. And the Chandler Motor Car Company had a reputation for being relatively technologically advanced, with very good performance due to a lightweight 6-cylinder engine, yet still rather intermediately priced, and not as expensive as a Packard or a Pierce Arrow. Chandler went out of business, of course, during the beginning of the Great Depression. It was purchased by the Huff Motor Car Company, which in turn went out of business about the time of the Second World War. And finally, another Model T, and another different kind of a variant. This is a pickup truck variant of the Model T that has also been converted as a fuel truck with a tank of gasoline and a pump on the back of it. And we actually use this Model T to fuel our airplanes on weekend mornings. So the Model T is still hard at work here at Old Rhinebeck Aerodrome. Along the fence line, and then drive them past again in front of the grandstand. 13 Renault taxi cab, the 1928 Chandler sedan, and the 1927 Model T fuel truck. And here they are, Model T Speedster, Renault Taxi, the Chandler, and the fuel truck. And here comes the new standard, low over the tree, the last flight before the air show. They're having fun up there. And another perfect smooth landing.
He hasn't gone since he got
And so we will deplane our passengers and then taxi the new standard across the field and park it, so that we can get ready to begin our air show. Signal that they are cleared to take off. And that's basically it. We also have a red flag, emergency. We don't use that flag very often.
So they don't have the radio on there.
And preparing for takeoff on the Airbus signal.
Like the one
how about a show of hands? How many people here have been here before? How many of them? Airplanes, for the most part, have two completely separate ignition systems. So that if one fails, the other one will keep the engine running. So the pilots run up their engines and test both ignition systems separately. There's also a carburetor heat on many of the airplanes. On a warm, humid day like today, that moist air being drawn through the carburetor actually could be cold enough to form ice. And so there's a heating system built in that will help to prevent that. So all of those are tested. The pilots are ready to go. As soon as the air boss waves his flag, who's ready to have fun with old airplanes today? Yeah! Let's fly! In his Waco INF from 1930. Following is J.D. Daly in the 1934 Booker Youngman. And as these two airplanes climb for altitude, I'd like to ask you to please rise for the singing of our national anthem. Living in their airplanes, they would fly to cities and towns that did not have an airport, and a nearby farmer's field. So you can see that streamer having been dropped from the Booker. That is an ordinary household item that every one of you has. Can anybody guess what that streamer's made of? It is toilet paper before it reaches the ground. This is not just any toilet tissue. This is Dulcie, the light and fluffy brand. And this is the fabulous, death-defying Dulcie Dive. 3 cuts on the ribbon so far. Look how Janie kicks that Booker around for another pass. And cut number 4. That airplane was designed to teach pilots how to fly acrobatics. You can see how nimble it is. She's going after that clump. Cut number 5. Boy, she's going to have individual sheets pretty soon. During World War II. This airplane was built in Spain in 1953. Here comes Janie Daly right over the trees in the 1934 Booker Youngman. It is a beautiful day to photograph airplanes. Airplane, but could do a pretty good job, as Dave will demonstrate. Now, Dave has been flying this act for many decades. He used to fly it in a Tiger Moth training plane from World War II. A couple of years ago, he acquired this Waco INF. And let's see if he can match Janie's score of 5 cuts. There's a ribbon. And there's a second ribbon. Look at that, he's almost upside down. Now lining up, can he cut both of those ribbons on one pass? I think he cut 2 sheets off the top. I would almost give him those 2 cuts. He's looking over his shoulder, coming back around. The top one's clumping up pretty good. The bottom one's stretched out nicely. But he's going after the bottom one. He has time to wait for the higher one to come down lower. So there's cut number 3. And now looking over his shoulder, where is that ribbon, boy? It's dropping fast. And he's going for it, diving down, down, down toward the treetops. Lining up, can he cut it? Cut number 4. Okay, the upper ribbon is still pretty high up. There's a little piece of it down at Dave's altitude, so it looks like that's what he's going after. And there's cut number 5. He has tied Janie's record. Of course, he's using 2 ribbons. And now climbing for altitude. Can he get up to the level of that last piece of ribbon? Coming around, the ribbon's getting very close to our runway, which means he'd have to knock off if he can't stay over the trees. But there is cut. Did he actually cut it, or did he just skim below it? I don't know if that's cut number 6 or not. Come on, Dave, one more try. There's number 6 for sure. Diving to gain some airspeed. There he is, 6 cuts for Dynamite Dave. And there he is, Dave King, the Waco I-10F. Okay, now they will be making their landing approaches. And as they set up for their landings, we're going to take you back in time now to the very earliest days of flying. Back in the days before World War I, when flying was just getting started, of course, the Wright brothers were building airplanes, and also a New Yorker named Glenn Curtiss was their main competitor. And so in those early years, there were certainly other manufacturers, but in America, it was the Wright brothers and Glenn Curtiss that got aviation started. Now remember, they didn't really have any patterns. Anybody else's example, they had to make these airplanes to their own design, with their own ideas, and so there was no standardization. Meister, they were extremely successful in competitions in the 1950s and 60s. And there's Janie arriving. We're going to taxi these 2 airplanes together right down the fence line again so you can get some great photographs. The sun is at a perfect angle. Flying abilities today.
You can press the button, Mama. Look at the bicycle.
Two wings. I see. It's too small for a propeller. Yeah, those wings are awfully small. So what are you going to do with that? You're going to fly it, you said? You're flew that around the patch. It's true, it's ultralight. I wouldn't want to give anybody a license to fly that. But you do have a good brisk breeze today. Hey, Air Boss, is this covered under our waiver? Bicycle. Here we go. They're gonna, oh, that's a very sophisticated rocket he's got on there. There he goes. He's got some thrust into the wind. Uh-oh, his wings folded up on him. I don't know if he's gonna get off the ground with his wings folded up. Shane, look out, there's a ditch over there on the other side of the field. Don't go down into the ditch. Oh no! Where did he go? He went right off into the ditch. Oh! Yikes. Gee, I guess Elon's not the only one that builds rockets that explode. But there's Shane. He's still up. Wow. Individual designs for airplanes. They both had certain similarities. They both used biplanes with the engine mounted between the wings, pilot right on the leading edge of the wing itself, pusher propeller, elevator sticking out in front. But that's about where the similarities ended. Now this airplane is a replica, an exact reproduction of a 1911 Curtiss Model D. Curtiss and his exhibition flyers set many records in the Curtiss Model D. It has a very strange control system. We're not going to ever dare to fly this airplane out over the trees, but we will attempt to fly it the length of the runway. A primitive airplane with an original 90 horsepower OX-5 engine. Let's see how our pilot, Steve Lopresti, can handle this. They are. And here he comes. Pretty stiff wind today. It should get off the ground pretty easily, but it's bumpy. There he is. He's in the air. He's got the airplane flying. Look at those controls flopping around. Oh, about one wing. And he's got it down in one piece at the same time, using a stick on the right-hand side of the pilot's seat. They had a second stick on the left-hand side that controlled the elevator for up and down. Glenn Curtiss, having raced motorcycles before he started building airplanes, he had a different approach to how to control an airplane. Notice that in between the wings are control surfaces. Those are ailerons. He put them there between the wings so as not to infringe on the Wright brothers' patent of warping or twisting the wings. By the way, it didn't work. They sued him anyway. But we're going to turn the airplane toward you so that we can demonstrate why we don't fly this airplane out over the trees. Okay, so to steer the airplane like a car, you have the steering wheel in front, and that operates the rudder at the back just like a boat. Okay, pretty simple. To go up and down, pushing forward on the wheel points the nose down, pushing back on the wheel operates the elevators at both the nose and the tail. But what about banking the airplane? What about keeping the wings level, as you saw Steve almost drag the wings to level the wings like riding a motorcycle. The pilot leans his body in the seat, and that's connected to the aileron. So that's unlike any airplane in the air today. Steve had to remember and keep track of all of that while he was making that flight, saying, I'm not flying my Lustrum, I'm not flying my Lustrum, I am flying this Curtiss Model D. So that was an incredible flight by Steve Lopresti in one of the most primitive airplanes of its day, although they built hundreds of these Curtiss pushers before World War I. The thing that we could offer at the time was the Curtiss Jenny, same manufacturer, but a few years newer. This is a 1917 design, the Curtiss JN4 Jenny, and the nickname came from its designation, JN. The pilots just naturally called it a Jenny. So this was used as a training plane in World War I. It was used after the war actually during the war for the first airmail services. And that's what we're going to demonstrate for you today is an airmail flight in a Curtiss Jenny. This is a special Jenny. This is the H model, which has a 150 horsepower Hispano Suiza V8 in it instead of the 90 horsepower Curtiss OX-5. So this airplane's a little more powerful, a little more capable, and that's why it was chosen for the airmail service. This particular example is an original airplane. It's painted in U.S. Navy colors because parts of this airplane actually were used in Pensacola, Florida as a U.S. Navy training plane. So when we restored it, we did it in Navy colors. Today, it's going to carry the mail as it did in the early days. The first airmail flight was in 1917. The Army undertook these as a way of carrying mail and messages during the war from Washington, D.C. to New York City with a stop in Philadelphia. So for the inaugural flight, the takeoff from Washington, D.C., there were all members of Congress there. There were other dignitaries, government officials. They tried to start the engine, it wouldn't start, it wouldn't start, it wouldn't start. Finally somebody looked in the gas tank and it was empty. Of North found himself lost over Virginia, landed, and transferred his airmail to the nearest train station. So the first airmail went by train, except the flight from New York took off on time, got to Philadelphia, refueled, made per squeeze-up. V8 water-cooled engine. The airplane is original. It's 108 years old.
There's the mail.
And we are going to fly the mail, as it were, in 1918. Which was essential in a training plane. And so it was very successful in that role. It was used by the U.S. Army, the U.S. Navy, and the Royal Canadian Air Force, as well as the British Naval Air Service. They all used Jennies for training their pilots. After the war, there were thousands of Jennies that had never been flown. They were still packed in their original crates. They built over 6,000 Jennies during World War I. So pilots returning from the war could buy a surplus Jenny for like $500, which was not a lot of money. Even by today's dollars, that would be about $7,000. Imagine buying a brand new plane today for $7,000. But they decided they could buy an airplane cheap. They would go and see if they could actually earn a living with the flying skills they learned during the war. And these were the barnstormers that flew around the country. Notice the Jenny's stability. It can fly very, very slowly and not fall out of the sky. Very forgiving for a young pilot. So these barnstormers would fly to remote towns and villages, usually in the Midwest, places where people may have never even seen an airplane, and they would land in a farmer's field and take people for rides. Usually, and so they were actually the original barnstormers. When pilots started doing the same thing, the same name was applied to them. So what you're seeing and hearing now would have been the very first sight of an airplane for many, many Americans in the 1920s.
And you can feel it, right?
And there is the Jenny arriving at the end of its airmail flight. Is to use the rudder or to have somebody help turn the airplane by grabbing a wingtip. What slows the airplane down is simply a tail skid digging into the ground to slow the plane down. Pilot Rob Williams at the controls of the original 1918 Curtiss jet for reconnaissance, scouting, occasionally for bombing, but it very quickly was discovered or realized that if a pilot could prevent his opponent from doing the scouting or bombing that he wanted to do, that would be just as valuable as doing it himself. And so the idea of carrying guns into the air and trying to shoot down the enemy's airplanes began. Now at first they simply carried pistols and rifles and tried to aim out the side of the plane while they were flying alongside the other one. No airplanes in those days were particularly maneuverable. That didn't work too well. But then the idea was hit upon. If you mounted the machine gun directly in front of the pilot and synchronized it so it would miss the blades of the propeller, all you had to do then was aim the airplane and you're aiming your gun. And so the synchronized machine guns were developed 1915 to enable aerial combat to begin. So then there were two-seat airplanes for reconnaissance and bombing and single-seat airplanes for fighting. The one that we just started, arguably the most recognizable airplane of World War I, is the famous Fokker triplane.
That one, tell me about.
Here we go, takeoff time for the Fokker triplane. Yeah, check out that timing ability. Pilot of the triplane is Mark Mondello, our chief of maintenance here at old Rhinebeck Aerodrome. And now the SPAD 7 lining up for takeoff. Matt Hewer at the controls of the SPAD. The SPAD has a completely different design philosophy. Instead of good climbing and high maneuverability, the SPAD was built for speed. So the wings are very, very thin, but the airplane is very, very strong. Here goes SPAD 7 on takeoff. An hour. The Fokker triplane, only 103. So the triplane depends on altitude, climbing ability, and maneuverability. The SPAD is the faster airplane. Right now, the triplane is going to use his altitude advantage to convert that height into speed by diving. And that will bring him right down on the tail of the SPAD. Remember, the machine guns are fixed to fire straight forward, so they can't defend the tail. Get on the tail of your opponent, you have a clear shot if he flies straight and level. Of course, you can see the SPAD is not flying straight and level. He's zigzagging, trying to prevent as poor a target as possible. A nice, beautiful vertical turn on the part of the SPAD, right down on the deck. Triplane's still above him, however. Those high lift wings. Now that they're both on the same level, SPAD would be the faster. In those days, you had to get really close for the relatively slow-firing machine guns to have any effect, to be in any kind of accuracy. You had to get really close to your opponent. Van now using his speed to catch right up to the triplane. Now he's in a good position if the triplane would only fly straight and level. But triplanes don't do that very well. The triplane, in fact, is very difficult to fly because it's so unstable. One of the reasons they only made 320 of them. Now the span is right on the triplane's tail. He can barely miss at this range. That was hard fighting. Now in World War I, the pilots didn't actually refer to this as a dogfight. They did have that word, but they used that word when two squadrons met each other in combat, and very rapidly there were dozens of planes flying in all directions, shooting in all directions, even colliding. That was what World War I pilots considered a dogfight. This would be more like a duel. Now the triplane back on the span's tail, as you can see, and really keep up. The triplane diving down, looking for an emergency landing field, but trailing a cloud of the First World War. The American Air Force fought a lot of bad fighters. Down, but that tail skid digging into the dirt. Nice, smooth wheel landing. Tail skid down. Baron von Richthofen, the Red Baron, described the triplane as follows. It climbs like a monkey and maneuvers like the devil. Look at that tight turn. I'd like to see you do that in an F-16. Going down, feeling for the ground. There it is. Perfect three-point landing. The famous. You gotta talk a little louder, Max. Wings don't work. We've been flying with wings all day. Oh, too heavy. The rocket. Two rockets. Question, how do you steer that thing? How are you going to steer? How are you going to come back down? Or you lean like the Curtis pusher.
You're really going to go up
Fly any higher than you're willing to fall. Airbus, can they try this out? Looks like they're determined to anyway. Oh boy. There we go. Later that same day.
This is something.
Alright, feel free to talk among yourselves, folks. We've got a mouth. He's got one rocket out of two. And yeah, it's not enough for us to get him off the ground, which I think is probably a good thing. I hope his pants don't catch fire. He's headed for that same ditch. Well, you know, there's a puddle of water down there. He may be aiming for that. He wants to charter a flight. Cliff, don't let him get on board. Where did he get that money? Oh, here's the Aerodrome Security Force. Okay, Aerodrome Security's on the job. Now the airplane went the other way, guys. Alright, the plane's headed down to the south end for takeoff. Hey, don't shoot at our airplane! Gee whiz, trigger happy security guards here. Demonstration anyway, I guess. And wait a minute, what's on the wing of the plane? Oh no, it's the convict! He's hanging on, he won't let go! Look out!
That's good, Tom.
Right, he's in the air! Stop shooting at our airplane! Yikes! The convict's in the air, and you've got it under control. No, you're not going to try to shoot him off the wing. Thank you very much. He is coming back. The convict is still hanging on. I don't know. Don't hit the plane. Especially don't hit the pilot. You haven't seen your husband. Okay, there he comes. All right, they will wing over here. That's almost as maneuverable as the triplane. In another Great Lakes sport trainer reproduction. By Dave in his Waco INF. With these four airplanes is get them together in a formation and demonstrate precision close formation flying. Now, you can go to any air show in the world and you can see teams of airplanes flying in close formation. But most of the time, those are all the exact same airplane. They're all F-16 fighters, or they're all T-6 trainers, or they're all Pitts specials. So all the airplanes have exactly the same performance characteristics and handling characteristics for most of those formation teams. Here, our pilots are going to do close formation with 3 different types of airplanes. Waco, Dave King and the Waco struggling to tail on to the formation as it comes across here. We're going to fly right over the tree line in a V formation. Great Lakes 1 and 2 on the left side, and Dave King tucked right in on the right in his Waco. 4 airplanes flying as one. A very impressive tight formation for these old airplanes. So now they're going to turn that formation. Air shows. Okay, now we're going into a echelon formation. Steerman, Great Lakes, and Waco before they break off to begin our last competition of the afternoon. Not our last act, but another competition. How many balloons can each of these pilots pop with the propeller will not pop? You have to actually hit it with the propeller to make it pop. Rob Williams coming in. There's only one balloon up. Can he see it? Can he hit it? Oh. Keep an eye on it. Nope. Good balloon. There's 2 points for whom have done 3. Hey, Cliff Daly in the Great Lakes. I don't see very many balloons for him to aim at. And he's doing it. Dynamite Dave. Oh, now they launch all the rest. A target-rich environment now. Oh, right between the 2 of them. What's he gonna choose? Son of them. Start moving fast. Matt Hewer. Those are nice and high now, but he's not. In the Great Lakes, and the champion of today, Dynamite Dave King in the Waco INS. Wacos were designated, all Wacos were designated with a 3-letter combination. The first letter denotes what engine is on it, the second letter denotes the wing design, and the third letter denotes the fuselage design. As I said, some of them were open cockpit like this. Many of them were enclosed cabins by fly overhead. There is Matt Hewer in this airplane. Was such a popular and successful aerobatic airplane. Throttling back, slowing down, and he drops into a spin. Straightening out, pulling back on the stick, full throttle, smoke on, pulling up into a perfect loop. And continuing to pull up again, going inverted, but this time he's going to roll out and do another half loop in the other direction. Well, before he gets too far away, he's going to pull up for another hammerhead turn. Straight up, straight up, straight up. Gravity always wins. When he runs out of speed, pick the rudder and come right back down the other way. And now another roll, but this time 1, 2, 3, 4, a 4-point hesitation roll. And flying on the side of the fuselage, not the wing. The nice edge pass. Again, you can hear the wind in the wires. Ladies and gentlemen, precision flyer of our premier aerobatic pilot, Mr. Matt Hewer. And so, once again, thank you all for coming to our air show this afternoon. It's your patronage, your coming through the gate that helps to keep these old airplanes in the air. If you had a great time today, tell your friends and neighbors about us. Come back again. We are the only air show in the world that flies every single weekend, weather permitting, from mid-June to mid-October, so there's never a bad week to plan a trip to the old Rhinebeck Aerodrome. Just keep an eye on the weather. Let's see what this looks like.
Fort Pierce, Florida. Wow.
Okay. That's
That's so hot. My gosh, they're so big, aren't they?
This is in 27.
If I were to go on a hike, next previous hike was like 7 or 8. Yeah, so then go. Let's see if I can get you